Well, that was a pleasant drive from Vlora over Logra Pass and then down the coast. And we've now arrived at Porto Palermo, which is in the south of Albania on the Ionian coast. It's protected by two large headlands and high hills behind it. In ancient times, this bay was known as Panormus, but was given its new name, Porto Palermo, during the Byzantine era. Down here is the submarine base, which after 20 years I'll be going into, so I'm very excited about that. We've got permission by the military to go in there and film today, so we'll be doing that, and then after that we'll be looking at Ali Pasha's castle, which is situated in the middle of the bay. Well, the good news is we made it onto the military base. We got through the front gates and the guards with our paperwork, of course. But the sad news is today they've decided to close the tunnel and they're not allowing us to go into film. These things happen with military. You never know what activities they've got going on, etc. So what can you do? But the good news is we're on the base. We're right next to the tunnel. And I'll just give a bit of a backstory here. So in 1944, at the end of the Second World War, the communists took power in Albania under the command of Enver Hoxha, who became a ruthless dictator. This government was formed under the protection of the Yugoslavs and also the Soviet Union. But this relationship was very short with both of them. They broke off ties with the Yugoslavs a few years later because Enver Hoxha was very concerned that Albania would be annexed by the Yugoslavs. So he cut off ties with them in 1948. And then with Khrushchev in the Soviet Union becoming a bit more of a revisionist, taking a softer line with communism, so that they could live within a mixed global community, Enver Hoxha thought that he was becoming too soft and a revisionist, walking away from the strong Marxist-Leninist communism that he had adopted. So he began cutting off ties with the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union finally invaded Czechoslovakia in 1968, that was it for Enver Hoxha. He then broke off all ties and left the Warsaw Pact. Then, luckily for him, he was thrown a lifeline by the People's Republic of China, who didn't have a mouthpiece at the United Nations. The representative of the Chinese at the United Nations was the Taiwanese government. The People's Republic of China, the Communist Chinese, didn't have any representation, so by paying Enver Hoxha, throwing him a financial lifeline, he was able to become their mouthpiece. And this lasted fine for a few years until Hoxha then also suspected of the Chinese of becoming revisionists, as they welcomed Nixon in 1971 to visit China. And then in 1977, the Chinese extended an invitation to General Tito of Yugoslavia to visit. And for Enver Hoxha, that was a step too far. So he decided to cut off ties with the Chinese as well and go it alone. He tried to make Albania an independent state that was self-sufficient, but as we know, that became a disaster. So Enver Hoxha was completely paranoid of imperialist invasion, of other communists invading. So he then went on a spree, starting in the 1970s, of building bunkers all across this land, about 175,000. And this bunker for submarines is the only one of its kind in Albania. It's very unusual. Sadly, we're not going in, but we can definitely film around it and have a look around the area. Let's go. So this bunker is 750 meters long. Massive feat of engineering that goes completely under this headland and opens up with another gate onto the Ionian Sea. So submarines or fast craft could come in this side of the bay, be serviced, refueled, had new ammunition put on them, and then let out straight into the sea on the other side. Very effective, but never really used, because in 1955, when Albania joined the Warsaw Pact, the Soviet Union stationed 12 whiskey-class submarines here, with the intention of being able to control and check NATO within the Mediterranean. This worked fine for a few years, until Enver Hoxha became concerned about Khrushchev becoming a revisionist and forced the Soviets to leave Albania. With them, they took 8 of the whiskey-class submarines, so he was only left with 4, making it difficult to find parts for the submarines. And with his crumbling infrastructure, these craft pretty much became useless. There's one still stationed in Vlora at Pasha Liman Naval Base. It's decaying. The other 3 have long been scrapped. But this base was used for a short time with the submarines, and they'd come in this side and leave the other side. Enver Hoxha was also very concerned about the proximity of NATO to his maritime border. As we have Corfu just a few miles away, there was an incident immediately after the Second World War with the British Navy when they fired on the British Navy for being too close to their border, and also they then mined the channel there and blew up 2 British ships, and many sailors died because of that. So this proximity to NATO forces also would have determined this base to be built here, especially for fast craft and for submarines. Good deterrence for keeping NATO away from him. The setting for this base is just spectacular. It's sitting right on the edge of this bay, beautiful clear water. I mean, if you were in the military, this would be a great place to be stationed. And it still is a working military base. There's a lot of naval people walking around. We've been given the correct paperwork to be here, so don't try and come onto this facility just through the fence. And there are a lot of armed guards here. So these large doors were obviously intended to stop any form of attack. They're big iron doors on the base on both sides, and inside the tunnel there were also workshops for maintaining the submarines and craft. There were barracks, and it had many hundreds of men stationed here during the Cold War. As you can see, there's still some fast military craft stationed here today. But the water's just spectacular. Obviously a deep channel to allow submarines to come in. And I've seen some spectacular looking blue fish swimming around in here. Obviously they don't need the paperwork. But that's it. It's a huge structure and a massive feat of engineering to go 650 meters through this rock. And they are big concrete doors. Some of the artillery bunkers that you find around Albania have massive concrete doors on them, blast doors, but these are absolutely huge. It's like a mix between the dystopian past and Lord of the Rings.